When I saw that photo on Instagram, my heart felt like it was being crushed. My mother, my aunt, the whole family raising champagne glasses on a yacht's deck, in the middle of the ocean, beaming under the Caribbean sun. But the one person missing was Grandma Eleanor. The woman who raised me, loved me, and preserved every memory of my childhood. It was her 70th birthday, and she sat alone in her old kitchen with a small cake and 10 place settings laid out, waiting for people who would never show up. I left my promotion party, abandoned all plans, and hit the road to get back home. Not out of anger, but because of a clear gut feeling something was wrong. Something beyond mere thoughtlessness. Something like betrayal. I never could have imagined that the hasty turn of my car that day would pull me into a journey not just to protect my beloved grandmother, but to uncover a secret that could change everything I ever believed about my family. And it all began at 4:18 p.m., when a small notification popped up on my phone screen. Initially, I only meant to check messages while waiting for the final contract printout at the office. The business trip to New York had just been confirmed, and tonight was the promotion celebration party. Everyone was excited, especially my boss, who had reminded me 3 times this week that this is a big turning point for you, Clara. I had planned to smile and say yes, as always. But then an Instagram notification popped up on my phone screen, and everything seemed to freeze. I clicked. The first image appeared my mother Vanessa in a white lace-trimmed dress, raising a glass of champagne with Aunt Susan and Uncle Mark on the deck of a luxurious yacht. The sky behind them was an absurdly clear blue, as if the world had no worries left. Below was the caption, "Family, time is everything. Just Caribbean cruise, just grateful heart." I paused for a few seconds, then scrolled. Second photo, my cousin posing by a pool. Third photo, the whole family enjoying a candlelit dinner by the sea. Fourth photo, I don't remember. Everything blurred. I could hear my heartbeat louder than the office printer. A cold sensation crept up my spine despite the air conditioning set at 72 degrees. And then I remembered today was Grandma Eleanor's 70th birthday. The woman who raised me through 4 childhood summers, who never forgot a single grandchild's birthday, who saved the best slice of cake for me because I seemed less noticed than my cousins. I opened my phone, scrolled to the family group chat on Messenger. No mention of her, not a single birthday wish. I texted my mom, "Mom, isn't today Grandma's birthday? Are you all really on a cruise scene?" No reply. I called Grandma. The phone rang 3 times before cutting off. I called again. On the 4th try, she picked up. Clara, her voice was weaker than I remembered. "Grandma, I'm calling to wish you a happy birthday. I thought we'd be gathering tonight." A pause, then a soft laugh, like a cold breeze passing through an old window. "It's okay, dear. I thought they'd come, but plans must have changed. I have some cake. It's enough." I sat up straight in my chair. "Grandma, you had a party and no one showed up. It's fine." I lit the candles. "I'm okay, Clara. Don't worry." I heard the hesitant clink of a knife cutting into cake over the phone. She was still waiting for someone to knock on the door. That kitchen, I could picture it clearly, with its cream-colored tablecloth, a chipped porcelain plate, and faded carnations. I stood up looking at the small gift box on my desk, a bracelet custom-made from Etsy, engraved with "To the one who never let go." I no longer felt the mood for a promotion party. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys, walked out of the office, and left a single message for my manager. "I'm sorry. I have to go." I drove nearly 4 hours from Dallas to Houston. On the highway, LED billboards flashed warnings of an approaching storm, but my mind was heavier than the clouds ahead. I didn't call anyone else. I didn't want to hear another word. I didn't know what I expected. An explanation. A mistake. A reasonable excuse. But deep down there was a feeling I couldn't mistake they had left her behind, on her 70th birthday, and they were laughing, toasting on a yacht funded by her. I knew because I'd seen the travel invoice in my mom's email with a note Grandma said she'd cover it all as long as the family goes together. Back then I had my doubts, but I stayed silent. As always, this time I wouldn't. I arrived at Grandma's house at 8:36 p.m. The porch light was still on the kitchen table just as I'd imagined, a small untouched cake, half-burnt candles, and an empty chair across from her. Grandma Eleanor looked up surprised. "Clara, how did you get here at this hour?" I hugged her, saying nothing. I felt her shoulders tremble slightly. I pulled out a chair and sat across from her. I looked around neatly arranged plates filled water glasses. 10 place settings enough for the whole family. "You're still waiting for them?" I asked. She didn't answer, just shook her head lightly, but her eyes lingered on the door, still hoping someone would walk in. I took the small knife, cut a slice of cake, and placed it on her plate. "Happy birthday, Grandma," I said. She nodded, offering a smile as thin as mist. And in that moment, something broke inside me. Not because of a forgotten birthday, but because of betrayed trust. I knew there was no going back for any of them, at least not the way things were before. But I also knew if I didn't stay, if I didn't do something now, no one else would. I'm not sure what choked me up more, the image of Grandma Eleanor sitting alone in her dim kitchen, or the smell of warm vanilla cake on a table no one touched. Her small house was the same pale yellow paint, peach-patterned curtains, a faint citrus oil scent. But that night something was different. The air, the breathing, the sense that time had frozen the moment she lit those candles and waited. I stood at the threshold for a few seconds as if I were an uninvited guest. She looked up, her eyes caught between surprise and embarrassment. "Clara, are you crazy, coming at this hour?" I didn't let her finish. I stepped in, gently placing my bag on the chair beside her. "I'm late, but I'm here." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that hides tears with relief. On the table was a small 2-tier cake she'd made it herself. The porcelain plates were neatly set, glasses-filled napkins folded squarely like in a restaurant. Exactly 10 settings, no one missing, no extras. "You still thought someone would come?" I asked, my voice softening. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Yes, I always hope so. You know, hope doesn't cost much." My throat went dry, part anger, part shame. I hadn't called, hadn't checked, hadn't made sure she was okay, not even with a text. I sat across from her, took the small knife by the cake, and cut a slice. My hand trembled slightly. "Vanilla cake, yes, the recipe you loved in 6th grade. I still remember, don't I?" I nodded. In my memory was that small kitchen summer afternoons with cicadas humming, Grandma Eleanor's hands dusted with flour, and me sneaking bits of frosting. I couldn't recall a recent memory that felt so comforting. We ate in silence. The porcelain plates clinked faintly out of place. Outside, a light drizzle began. I looked out the window, streetlights cast trembling shadows on the wall like my own mind. "I saw the photos," I said. "Mom, everyone. On the yacht." She only nodded, said nothing. I set my plate down, looking straight into her eyes. "You didn't happen to know where they were going, did you? You knew beforehand." She looked up and this time didn't avoid my gaze, just a tired smile. "I paid for that trip." The room seemed to collapse. I sat up straight. "You did what your mom said, it was a healing trip, that the family needed time together, that I wouldn't handle the packed schedule. I thought, if they had each other, it was worth it." I said nothing. Couldn't. I remembered the photos, radiant faces, wine glasses, Mediterranean sunlight glinting off my mom's white dress. Each smile was a knife wound. Grandma lowered her head, twisting the tarnished silver bracelet. One engraved with my name, Clara. I gave it to her for her birthday 5 years ago. She never took it off. I just wanted them to be happy. That's all. And what about you? She looked up, her eyes lingering on my face, as if unsure she had the right to answer. Have you ever thought you deserved to be loved, to be present, to be remembered? My voice caught. Not from anger at them, but at myself for forgetting that too. That she wasn't just the one holding things together, but the one keeping them from falling apart. She blinked. Her lips moved slightly, then closed. No words needed. I understood. I stood up, walked over and hugged her. Her chest felt frailer than I expected, but her warmth was the same as always. If you've ever seen someone you love left behind, if you've ever witnessed a heart waiting for no one to show up, you'd understand why I couldn't go back to Dallas that night. You'd understand why I'd give up any party to sit by a table gone cold. I stayed at her house that night. While clearing the table, I accidentally knocked a folded piece of paper from under a tray. A corner of an envelope peeked out. I picked it up. The cover read clearly in neat handwriting, "Private documents do not open unless urgent." A small wooden box under the bed lay quietly, as if always waiting for someone patient enough to open it. And I started to feel afraid. Not of the past, but of the truth that could change everything I thought I knew about my family. I found the wooden box while searching for Grandma Eleanor's medication in the middle of the night. She had fallen asleep in her armchair, her face softened after a long day, but her breathing still heavy. I don't know what made me kneel on the floor and rummage under the bed. Maybe intuition. Maybe just restlessness, realizing I knew so little about the house where the woman I loved had lived her entire life. The box sat quietly covered in dust and dampness, its rusted latch loose. A gentle flick and the lid creaked open softly like a sigh from far away. Inside was a mess of old papers, unsorted, no folders. Utility bills, medical records, a few faded photos from when Grandma was young. But what froze me was a thick sealed envelope with slanted handwriting in ink, last will and testament, William Sheridan, my grandfather. I barely remembered his voice. He passed when I was very young. But I remembered his pocket watch, and the last time I saw him letting me climb onto his lap and giving me a peppermint candy. Grandma still kept that watch in her bedside drawer. She always said he was the last person who knew how to love her kindly. I sat on the floor, hands trembling, as I tore open the envelope's edge. Inside was a handwritten but notarized will, dated 15 years ago. It clearly stated that all assets, the house savings, and 3 rental properties would go to his wife, Eleanor Sheridan. If she passed before him, the secondary heir was me, Clara Sheridan. My name. Clear, precise, unmistakable. I read that section over and over as if my eyes were deceiving my brain. Me, not my mother. Not Aunt Vera. Not my cousins I wasn't even close to. Me. I looked at Grandma Eleanor still sleeping. The yellow lamplight fell on her face. I didn't know if she remembered this will, or if she knew and forgot, or if she hid it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the dining table with the will and a cold cup of tea. My heart, a storm of emotions, moved, shocked, then a dull ache. I didn't know who I was angry at. My mother for manipulating everything, my grandmother for staying silent all these years, or myself for not asking, not searching sooner. The next morning I took the will to a law office in downtown Houston. I only intended to get it notarized, and if valid, re-establish the house's ownership according to my grandfather's original wishes. The office wasn't busy. An older female lawyer, calm and composed, met with me. She examined the documents carefully, wearing gold-rimmed glasses, unhurried. The handwriting and ink are clear. It's notarized from that time, she said. However, I held my breath. This document is no longer legally binding. It felt like a punch to the chest. How can it not be valid? It's the original. It's notarized. Yes, but it was superseded. Our system has a newer version filed 3 years ago, also under William Sheridan's name, but with an addendum signed by Eleanor Sheridan designating the heir as Vera Sheridan. I couldn't believe my ears. My grandfather died 20 years ago. How could there be an updated version? The lawyer looked up at me. This could be an addendum added by the legal spouse under authorization after his death. It has a fingerprint. Notarized. Valid. The world around me tilted. A fingerprint. Notarized. How could Grandma sign away all her assets to Vera right when her memory started to decline? I requested a copy of the documents and left the office, my head spinning. Something was wrong. I knew Grandma didn't want Vera as the sole heir. She never said it outright, but whenever I brought up assets, she'd dodge or say, "Living enough is enough, Clara. The rest, whoever needs it can take it." That was never a commitment. It was exhaustion. Back home, I went through every drawer, every stack of old papers, checking dates, hospital records. Grandma's cognitive decline became noticeable 2 years ago after the addendum was notarized. A terrifying possibility hit me: someone might have coerced her to sign. Or worse, forged the entire process. I needed to verify the legitimacy of that updated will. I needed an expert in signatures and fingerprints. And I needed to know exactly when Grandma signed those papers, if she signed them at all. I had no time to cry anymore. Grandma didn't just need comfort. She needed protection. And I, Clara Sheridan, was no longer the child standing on the sidelines of family photos. I never thought I'd tremble while holding an A4 sheet of paper. But that morning, my hands were ice cold, my heart racing, as the lawyer handed me a copy of the confirmation will of 2009, no longer legally valid. Each word as if printed in red-hot iron seared into my palms and memory at once. I sat motionless in the small law office room, the May sunlight of Houston streaming through frosted glass. The sun was still beautiful, still golden. Everything went on as if no one was losing a lifetime's worth over a piece of paper that might have been tampered with. This updated version, the lawyer said cautiously, was officially filed at the Texas Notary Office on April 12, 2022. It has Eleanor Sheridan's fingerprint signature witnessed by 2 people and a legal notary. I could only repeat one sentence. My grandmother never mentioned anything about it. She tilted her head, her breath light, but clear. Many elderly people don't talk. They trust in trust, not in papers. I clenched my hands in my lap, trying to suppress the fire in my chest. Trust. If I hadn't found the original will, I wouldn't have known anything. If I hadn't gone through those old papers, Grandma would have been reduced to a name on a transfer document no one remembered. Please give me a notarized copy of the new will, I said. My voice was cold, steady, unshaken. The lawyer nodded slightly. Of course. The new version designated all assets to my mother, Vanessa Sheridan, and my cousins. My name didn't appear. Not a single line. It wasn't about the money, the house, or the assets. Truly, it wasn't. But I needed one thing: justice for my grandmother, who still believed silence was love, that sacrifice was duty. I'd seen her light birthday candles in an empty house while the family dined on lobster in the Pacific funded by her. And now I was witnessing her entire life packaged into a document with a fingerprint I didn't believe was genuine. Back home, I watched Grandma Eleanor sleep in her armchair. Her frail hands rested loosely on a knitted blanket. I stared at her wrinkled fingertips and couldn't imagine how or why someone would guide her hand to sign a will she didn't understand, didn't truly accept. I went through the box of old documents again and found a medical record. A note from a neurologist in March 2022. Patient shows signs of short-term memory impairment. Recommends supervision for legal decisions. That note could be key. But a month later, April, she signed a valid document transferring all assets. I decided to start investigating. I called the notary office listed on the updated will. A young male voice, likely a recent law graduate, answered. I need to verify the witnesses and notary for Eleanor Sheridan's will from last April. I said, jotting down his every word. You want a full process statement, he asked. No, I want to meet the person who signed off on it. In person. A pause. Then he replied, Ms. Baird, the notary, has retired. But I might be able to help. I nearly held my breath. Do you know who brought my grandmother to the notary that day? Another silence. Then he said the name. I'm not sure if you know her. But the record shows the representative who brought her that day was Vera Sheridan. I froze. Vera, my aunt, my mother's sister, who emailed me 3 years ago. Mom's getting old. She shouldn't deal with paperwork. The one who vanished after that cruise. The one who never called once since Grandma fell ill. I set the phone down, my heart tightening with a choke. No more doubts. The will was deliberately altered. And Vera was there that day. I needed proof Grandma was manipulated or not lucid when she signed. I needed a lawyer specializing in wills and elder rights. I needed a signature and fingerprint expert. I emailed a Texas law firm specializing in elder financial fraud. They agreed to meet. But to start a case, they needed one thing: medical records predating the will's signing, and if possible, testimony from someone who worked at the old notary office. I had the medical records. But testimony, that was another issue. That night, I dreamed I stood between 2 rooms. One was Grandma Eleanor's old living room, with its warm yellow light and slow ticking clock. The other was a cold, endless hallway, where my mother and Vera stood, with their backs turned, holding a thick stack of papers. I called out. No one turned around. I woke at 3 a.m. with one decision: I'd find Ms. Baird, the notary, the only one who knew what really happened that day. I wasn't sure if she was still in Texas. But I knew someone who might know Josh, an old college friend who worked at the notary office. Josh once had a crush on me. Now was the time to call him back. I never thought I'd call my mother with a voice full of suspicion. But that morning, after a sleepless night tangled with fractured memories, I dialed her number like pulling a trigger. She answered after 3 rings. Her voice was still sweet, still measured as always. "Clara, calling so early, what's wrong?" I stayed silent for exactly 3 seconds, trying not to let emotions choke my throat. "When did you know about the will being changed?" A long pause on the other end. "What are you talking about?" I swallowed hard. "I went to the law office to verify Grandpa's will. They said it was voided. There's a newer one, legal with Grandma's fingerprint and signature. And it transfers everything to Vanessa." Her voice softened. "Clara, you're letting emotions get the better of you. Some things you don't understand." I let out a dry laugh. "Don't understand." Grandma sat alone in her old house on her birthday. No one showed up. "And you call that me not understanding?" She didn't respond right away. Then a sigh. "She's old, Clara. You know that. She's not fully capable of making decisions anymore. Vanessa helped with the paperwork just for convenience." I gripped the phone tightly. "You know full well she didn't sign those papers willingly." A gentle Clara emphasized as if I were a 3-year-old saying something absurd. "Don't make things complicated. You have a good job, a stable life. Don't dig up things that don't matter." I hung up before she could finish. Some words heard for the 100th time still break your heart like the first. I started asking neighbors around Grandma Eleanor's house, longtime acquaintances. Many were surprised to see me back. Some looked at me with a mix of pity and distance, as if I'd been gone too long to deserve concern for family matters. "You're Eleanor's granddaughter," Mrs. Peterson from next door asked when I knocked. I nodded. "Yes. Grandma and I are close." "How's she been lately?" She shook her head. "We don't see her out much anymore. The past few months, a few people your mom, the blonde one, Vanessa, came by often. She said Eleanor wanted to transfer assets, worried something might happen if it wasn't done in time." I kept my face neutral. "Did you see Grandma sign any papers?" Mrs. Peterson hesitated, then shook her head. "No, just heard Vanessa say so." I thanked her and walked away, my heart heavy. Those casual words opened a gaping hole if no one independently witnessed the signing, and if there was an irregularity in Grandma's health at the time. The new will might not be valid. Back at Grandma's, I dug through old papers again. In a drawer under the tea cabinet, I found a stack of medical records. Test results, prescriptions, doctor's appointments. I sorted them by date. Then I stopped at a typed form titled Behavioral Capacity Assessment from a Dr. Martin D. Lowe, someone I'd never heard of. The form was stamped 3 months before the new will's signing. At that moment, I knew I had to do 2 things: verify this doctor and investigate whether Grandma was truly lucid enough to willingly sign those transfer papers. I found Dr. Martin's clinic address with a quick online search. When I arrived, the receptionist was polite but firm. "We can't provide medical information without legal authorization." I pulled out the envelope with a copy of the original will, Grandpa's naming me as the secondary heir if Grandma passed. "I'm currently verifying the legality of this will, and my grandmother is still alive but not capable of handling paperwork. This concerns assets and inheritance. I need to confirm the behavioral capacity assessment signed by Dr. Martin." The receptionist hesitated. "I'll speak with the doctor. Please wait." 10 minutes later, an older man, thin with deep-set eyes and a white coat, came out. "I'm Dr. Martin. You're Eleanor's family." I nodded, then recounted the story briefly, no embellishments. He listened, pensive. "I remember her. A kind woman. I only met her once at the request of a family member." "Vanessa?" I asked directly. He nodded slightly. "We did a preliminary assessment, not a full psychological evaluation. Eleanor seemed tired, repeating words, but I didn't see clear signs of dementia. Something felt off." "Do you have records of that assessment? Or any audio-specific notes?" Dr. Martin frowned slightly. "I'd have to check. But if you suspect fraud, I suggest getting a lawyer." I nodded. "I will." On the way back, I pulled over, opened my phone, and started noting every detail. Partly so I wouldn't forget, partly to organize the truth. Here's what I knew. The original will from my grandfather valid, naming me as heir if Grandma passed. The second will signed months ago, legally binding on paper. but suspicious no independent witnesses, only a cursory doctor's check. The family, especially Vanessa, seemed to have actively pushed this process, even convincing neighbors Grandma willingly transferred assets. It was dusk when I returned to Grandma's. Through the living room window, the light still glowed. She was asleep in her armchair, a thin blanket draped over her frail legs. I sat beside her, watching her time-worn face. Part of me wanted to collapse. Another part whispered, "Not yet. Not now, because I'd just received an email from the law firm. They wanted to meet because they'd found a discrepancy in Grandma Eleanor's fingerprint document." I might have been right. If there was ever a moment in my life when my heart pounded like a war drum, it was when my hand signed the lawsuit that Monday morning. My name, Clara Sheridan, slanted slightly shaky but resolute, lay under the plaintiff section. I formally requested the court to suspend the 2022 will's validity and applied for legal guardianship of Grandma Eleanor, citing suspicions she was coerced or misled into signing when not fully lucid. My lawyer, Ms. Reynolds, a black woman in her 50s, with eyes sharp as a paper cutter, nodded slightly as I set the pen down. "Clara, now we enter the hardest part, proving the truth isn't on paper, but in the memory and character of someone manipulated." I gave a faint smile, the smile of someone too far gone to turn back. We had some evidence medical records showing Grandma's memory issues predated the signing. We were pursuing a signature analysis and requesting review of any notarization footage if it existed. But what haunted me most wasn't the courtroom. It was myself. Because the moment I filed the suit, an old memory resurfaced. Vivid. Painful. I was 10 that summer. The small house in Houston's suburbs was like an oven with its tin roof and the smell of melting asphalt from the backyard. Mom worked double shifts. Aunt Vera stayed with us but never hid her dislike for me. I remember standing outside the door, too scared to enter the living room. Mom and Vera were talking. I heard Vera's words clearly. "She's just an extra." If not for that accident, Vanessa wouldn't have kept her. I didn't fully understand, but I felt the choke in my throat. I knew they were talking about me, about how I wasn't a wanted child. I backed away, ran to my room, and buried my face in the pillow. Later, Grandma Eleanor pushed the door open. She didn't ask anything. She just sat beside me, stroked my hair, and said one thing: "You're worthy of love, Clara. No matter what anyone says, you're the best part Grandpa left behind." Those words, 7 words, were the anchor that held me through years of feeling like a shadow. When I decided to sue, it wasn't just for Grandma's justice. I was reclaiming the right to be loved properly, the lesson she taught me, but the family always did the opposite. That afternoon, I returned to her house. The rain had just stopped, the air smelling of damp and fallen leaves. I saw Grandma Eleanor in her armchair, her gaze distant as if lost in a long, deep dream. "Grandma, I did something today," I whispered, sitting beside her. She didn't respond, but her hand took mine. Though trembling, her fingers were warm. And in that moment I knew, even if she wasn't lucid enough to say it, she was still here. And she understood. At least partly. 3 days later, I got a call from my mother's lawyer, the defendant's side. His voice was cold as metal. "We understand you've filed a lawsuit and requested the court to suspend the current will. Our client, Ms. Vanessa Sheridan, denies all allegations and considers your actions an affront to family honor." I gripped the phone. "I just want the truth. Then we'll see you in court." The call ended without pleasantries. I wasn't surprised. My family was never known for kindness when pride was at stake. That night I sat alone reviewing the case files. I underlined key sections, highlighted details that could serve as evidence, increased sedative prescriptions during the month of the will's signing memory test records, Dr. Martin's testimony. But the more I read, the more I saw a gap. If we couldn't clearly prove Grandma wasn't lucid at the time of signing, the court might dismiss the case. Everything hinged on 2 factors: signature analysis and direct evidence of manipulation. I recalled Josh's words, the old friend from the notary office. He'd texted, "You should ask about the person who recorded the video that day. Not everyone signs papers without a camera." I sat up. In the document list, a small line footage recorded stored in the state notary system per regulation. Video. If I could find the original footage of Grandma signing, I'd know. Just by looking into her eyes in that moment, I'd know. The next day, I formally requested the extraction of the video footage from the notary office where the new will was signed. I knew they might refuse or delay, but at least I'd taken the next step. And I wouldn't stop, because every step now wasn't about claiming assets. It was about reclaiming honor for the woman who once held me and whispered, "You're worthy of love." I didn't expect the doorbell to ring at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. The sky was still lazily gray, and Grandma Eleanor's small house was warming with the smell of bread I'd just baked. I hadn't even finished putting on my sweater when the bell rang again, more urgently. I opened the door thinking it might be a neighbor needing help. But no. On the porch stood Vanessa, her hair hastily tied eyes pin. De eyes red, clutching a silver USB drive. Seeing me, she said nothing, just held out the small device, trembling. "You need to see this," she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd cried all night. I silently stepped aside for her to enter. Vanessa, whom I thought I'd never want to see again, looked entirely different. Not the usual poised, sharp woman, but someone who'd lost something profound, maybe herself. We didn't speak as I plugged the USB into my laptop. The screen showed a video file simply titled, "To Vanessa, 2019. I hit play. Grandma Eleanor's voice came through. Not as strong as I remembered, but softer, as if she knew this recording wasn't for a crowd, but for one person alone. Vanessa, she began sitting before the camera in her familiar blue cardigan, hands clasped in her lap. "If you're watching this, it means we might not have had the chance to say everything I've kept hidden." I glanced at Vanessa. She didn't blink. "You thought I loved Clara more. Maybe that's true, but not because you weren't worthy. Because you were always so strong, I forgot you needed hugs, praise, someone to lean on." I heard Vanessa stifle a sob. I thought I understood their strained relationship, but I never imagined Grandma had recorded an apology like this. "I didn't know how to be close to you without making you feel compared. I thought silence was best. But silence became a wall." She paused, looking down. "I know you're angry with me, and I understand. But I've always loved you. Even if I didn't know how to show it, I never stopped loving you, Vanessa." The video ended with a simple line. "If I could do it again, I'd want to be the first to tell you, you're special." The screen went black. Vanessa sat still. Tears streamed down her face, unwipeable. She turned to me, saying something I never thought I'd hear from her. "I was jealous of you, Clara. Since we were kids, you had what I always wanted, but didn't know how to ask for her gentle look. I didn't know what to say. I'm not here to fight for money, or lawsuits." Vanessa stared at her empty hands. "I just needed to understand why it all turned out like this." I nodded slightly. I'd asked myself that question through many sleepless nights. I hate myself for hurting her, for staying silent, for signing papers without reading them. But what I hate most is never asking her not once if she was okay. I handed her a glass of water. We both needed time to process what had just happened, but I felt it clearly. The distance between us wasn't just melting. Something else was returning compassion. "You don't have to forgive me," Vanessa whispered. "But if I can, I want to care for her with you. Not out of duty. For the first time in my life, I want to do something right." I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the garden fall leaves drifting down weightless. There was no anger left in me, but not quite forgiveness either. Maybe I needed time, and maybe Vanessa did too. But I knew this forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It's simply letting go of the burden so you and others can move forward. That morning after Vanessa left, I sat by Grandma Eleanor. She slept peacefully in her armchair. My hand brushed her wrist where she used to wear the bracelet I gave her. I whispered, "I think I'm ready to forgive." Because I understand people can only love others when they forgive themselves. And I knew tomorrow something would change. I never thought I'd have to take Grandma Eleanor to court. That morning, Houston was drizzling. Thin raindrops wove a delicate curtain over every path, every breath. I draped her thickest coat over her shoulders, tucking a scarf into her collar. Her hands were frail, trembling, but her acting a response. The trial began at 10 a.m. sharp. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and an emotionless voice, listened as Vanessa's lawyer argued that Grandma Eleanor was confused and incapable of managing assets, and her memory severely impaired that she wasn't lucid enough to sign any papers months ago. Vanessa spoke fluently, confidently, her words like nails driven into wood. Each one hit me like a hammer. My lawyer, Mr. Marshall, responded calmly. "We agree Mrs. Sheridan's health has declined, but that doesn't mean she can't recognize who truly loves her." He turned to me. "Clara, do you have anything to say to the court today?" I stood. My hands didn't shake. Strange. Maybe I'd been through too much heartache to be afraid anymore. I spoke slowly, steadily. "I'm not here to fight for money or status. I just want the truth to be seen. My grandmother sitting there taught me how to wash dishes, write thank you notes, smile when my heart was heavy. She was the first and only one to tell me, 'You're worthy of love.' If she's completely lost her mind, then why every time I hold her hand does she still whisper my name?" No one answered. I sat back down, helping Grandma Eleanor stand when the judge called her name. "Mrs. Eleanor Sheridan, do you know why you're here today?" The judge's voice rang out. She stood slowly, her frail legs battling the weight of the past. Her cloudy eyes scanned the room, then, like a miracle, stopped on me. And she said, "She's the only one who came to me." My heart exploded. Those words cut through the room like an unexpected slash in a long-standing argument. Vanessa turned away. I saw her shoulders tremble. No one spoke. Both sides' lawyers were silent. No questions followed. The judge nodded slightly, jotting something in her file. When Grandma sat down, I held her hand tightly, tears spilling without permission. An hour later, the ruling was read. The court recognizes Clara Sheridan as the legal guardian. Recent asset transfer documents require further investigation to verify their validity. The judge's voice was dry, but each word pierced my heart with justice. I didn't win. I just held on to what should never have been lost. Vanessa left the courtroom without looking at me, but I didn't feel anger, just an emptiness no one wanted to admit. Sometimes people lose each other not from hatred, but from lacking the courage to love properly. I helped Grandma Eleanor to the car. She didn't ask or say anything. She just leaned her head on my shoulder, her delicate hand lightly grasping my wrist. I saw her face reflected in the car window, silver hair soft on her cheeks, eyes half closed, strangely peaceful, as if she'd finally come home, not to a place, but to a feeling of not being left behind. Back home, she fell asleep as I tucked a blanket around her. I poured myself a glass, pursuing the lawsuit. Can the truth sometimes be what hurts people the most? I went back to Grandma's room, sat beside her, and held her hand this time, not for victory, but because I knew what's truly worth keeping. Sometimes only takes one person determined enough to hold on. But what I didn't know was, tomorrow a video would surface, a hidden memory, and it could change everything. The house seemed to breathe again. I don't know when it started, maybe that first morning after the trial, when sunlight slipped through the kitchen window, illuminating Grandma Eleanor's sleeping face in her old armchair. Or maybe when I decided to cook her beef stew recipe, and she looked at me smiling softly, genuinely. Her first real smile in months of living quietly in her own home. This house was once a haven. Then it became a place to store silence. Now every corner was regaining its original warmth, as if it too was waiting to be loved again. I cleaned slowly, not a rushed tidying, but carefully drawer by drawer, photo by photo. On the wall by the hallway to the living room, I paused at an old wooden frame inside a picture of Vanessa at 18 in her graduation gown standing beside Grandma. Vanessa's face was radiant, but Grandma's smile was distant. I took the frame down, not out of anger, but to make room for something truer. From a box in the storage room, I pulled another photo. Grandma, me, Grandpa, and Melissa on a picnic in Austin. Everyone's eyes were squinted shut from laughter. I framed it and hung it in that spot. Grandma Eleanor happened to pass by as I hung it. She stopped. "I remember this one. Your grandpa insisted on swimming to the middle of the lake, no lifeguard. It drizzled that day. You were 6, wearing those plastic sandals, running to see the fish." I laughed. "You remember details like that." She blinked. "Anything about you I don't forget." I didn't say more. My heart was full with that one sentence. That afternoon, I brewed a pot of Earl Grey tea. She loved it, especially with a thin lemon slice. I turned on the small radio by the windowsill, the one Grandpa fixed over and over for years. Classic jazz filled the room, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong round, warm sounds like memories coating the air. Grandma tapped her fingers to the rhythm, and then she smiled, not a sad, obligatory smile, a real one. I picked up my phone to capture the moment, then stopped. Part of me wanted to keep it private. Part of me feared recording too much would let the happiness slip away. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Melissa, my cousin in Denver, who always kept her distance from family drama. The message was short, but stopped me cold. "We're on your side. Mom, too. If you need a witness, just say." I stared at the screen. I didn't know how many. But knowing Melissa didn't turn away was enough to shift my world. I replied, "Thanks, sis. I don't need you to pick sides. I just need to know I'm not alone." She texted back almost instantly. "You were never alone. We were just silent, scared of being weak like Mom. But you're brave. And that's what's changing things." I couldn't hold back tears. Not from pain, but because, for the first time in ages, I felt seen without needing to explain. That night, Grandma and I sat on the old sofa. She laced her fingers with mine and said, "You're like your grandpa, quietly getting things done, no need for words. But you have my heart soft and forgiving." I smiled. "You think I'm soft? They say I'm stubborn. Stubborn doesn't mean hard. You're stubborn because you believe in something better. And you're tough, not from anger, but from love. That's where you're different." I knew who she meant by they, but I also knew she no longer held a grudge. Before she went to bed, I tucked her in and turned off the light. As I closed the door, I looked at the hallway, the neatly hung photos, as if each family member who'd lost their way was slowly returning. Not whole, with cracks still there, but at least the house had soft laughter again. I sat alone in the small downstairs office, the desk lamp casting light over scattered papers. At the top was the new will I'd drafted with the lawyer, fairer, clearer, with no room for anyone to exploit Grandma's trust again. But no space for resentment either. I'd thought about it for a long time. I could keep everything. The court recognized me as her legal guardian. I was the first named heir in Grandpa's original will, and now Grandma's sole representative. But I knew doing that would repeat what I'd condemned, taking controlling, deciding alone. So I chose to divide it. Not out of duty, but because I wanted things to start anew differently. Part of the assets would care for Grandma until the end. The rest I split fairly, including Vanessa and my cousins. But the key difference, none of them could interfere with Grandma's medical housing or financial decisions anymore. Legally, I remained her full guardian. I printed each copy, carefully filing them. As I closed the folder, I glanced at the one photo I kept from years past, a black and white shot of my grandparents in the backyard. They smiled, unpretentious, no show, just sunlight, holding hands in a real moment. A few days later, Vanessa returned. Not sneaking, not rigid. She knocked, holding a small bag of warm bread and pale pink roses. I let her in. Grandma was reading the paper in her armchair, glasses low on her nose. When Vanessa entered, Grandma looked up, her eyes softening. "I just wanted to see you, Mom." Vanessa said, her voice free of calculation for the first time in months of tension. "I'm not asking for anything. Just brought some bread you used to like." Grandma set the paper down, looking into her eyes. I held my breath. "Have you eaten?" she asked, as if the years of silence never existed. Vanessa nodded, tears welling. She sat on the floor by Grandma, resting her head on her knee, like a lost child finding home. I stood there, saying nothing. Maybe I didn't need to. I'd done my part, restored justice, kept my promise to Grandpa, and gave Grandma a non-lonely ending. But in that moment, watching them embrace, I realized I was gaining something bigger, a family being stitched back together from old tears. That day, Vanessa helped me wash dishes. We didn't talk much, but it was enough to know she was trying. Before she left, I handed her a copy of the asset division papers. "This is your share," I said. "Not much, not little, but fair. And no one can use it to control Mom anymore." She opened the paper, staring at the numbers. I expected nothing, but then she said something that made me turn away to hide my emotions. "Clara?" She whispered, "Thank you. for not becoming like us. I didn't respond, just nodded watching her leave in the fading afternoon light. When I returned, Grandma was still there, smoothing her old knitted blanket. I sat beside her, my hand on hers. "I'm not keeping it all, Grandma," I said softly. She looked at me, lips trembling. "You being here is enough. Some words need no explanation, and some people don't need you to prove anything more to trust you. They just need you to show up, stay, listen, and forgive." I set a table for 4 at a small Italian restaurant tucked behind old oak trees on Montrose. Not fancy, no flickering candles or 6-course fine dining. Just a family-run place with red and white checkered tablecloths. The smell of oregano and roasted garlic in the air. Warm, just right. Like I was inviting everyone back, not starting something new. I'd hesitated for a long time. Every reunion carries risks, especially after unhealed wounds. But sometimes you don't need apologies or explanations, just presence, real presence. Vanessa arrived first. She wore a beige turtleneck hair, neatly tied minimal makeup. When she saw me already seated, her eyes hesitated, but softened. I smiled as a greeting. She nodded, sat down. No talk of the past. No questions about the future. A silence that didn't need filling. Melissa came next. She said little, pulled out a chair, hung her coat, and set her bag down. "I brought apple pie," she said, as if reminding herself this was dinner, not mediation. But her eyes, when she looked at me and Vanessa, soft, hopeful. Finally, Grandma Eleanor walked in. I guided her slow steps. Her cream scarf was snug around her shoulders. She didn't ask what the occasion was, or feign surprise. She just held my hand, squeezing lightly. We sat around the table, no one rushing to speak. The waiter brought lemonade and a basket of warm bread, the smell of butter almonds and the faint clink of cutlery. The air held its breath, waiting for a touch or a sigh. I spoke first. "We haven't eaten together in over a decade. I thought we should start again. Not to fix mistakes, but to have something whole." Vanessa looked at me, her eyes thoughtful. "You think we can really start over?" "Why not?" I met her gaze. "We're all here. Same table." No one answered, but Melissa slowly poured water for everyone. "I used to think family was fixed. Now I think it's like music, some parts off key, some out of tune. But you can find the chorus again if someone pauses and counts the beat." We all smiled faintly. That metaphor may be the gentlest thing she'd ever said. When the main course arrived, lasagna for Grandma, mushroom ravioli for me, warm salad for Melissa, seafood pasta for Vanessa, things felt normal. No tension bubbling to the surface, just small questions. "Is it good?" "Mom, are you cold? You still at the old school?" Later, Vanessa looked at Grandma. Her voice was slow, sincere. "Mom, I know I hurt you, but I was hurt too. I didn't know what to do with that pain. It turned into anger. Then silence." Grandma didn't respond right away. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, then turned to her. "Silence is a voice too. But I want you to know I never stopped thinking of you. I just thought, if you needed time, I shouldn't pull you back." Vanessa lowered her head. I saw her grip the napkin tightly. "I needed you to say that a long time ago," she whispered. "And I'm here, because I don't want to hide anymore." The dinner continued, but it wasn't just dinner anymore. It became a moment I knew I'd remember, not for what was said, but for what was held back at the right time. No theatrics, no performance. Just a real meal, the first in years, where no one was missing. On the drive home, I held Grandma's hand. Her hand was still warm. "How was it?" I asked. She leaned her head on my shoulder, whispering, like a dream I didn't think I'd live to see. I smiled, tears welling. That was my feeling too, but instead of a dream, I called it what should have always been, if we'd learned to love sooner. Back home, I opened my email. A message from Mr. Marshall. "We found a personal document from your grandfather, not in the original files. A letter, possibly a private wish." I held my breath. The letter was on its way, and I didn't know if it held instructions, a story, or a truth no one dared uncover. Looking back on this journey, I don't see a story about assets or disputes. I see a journey of healing. A grandmother once alone in her own home. A granddaughter learning to let go of resentment to hold on to what's worthy. A fractured family finally sitting together, not needing to be right, just honest. This story reminds me love doesn't always come on time, but it can be chosen again, started anew, if we dare to step forward. If you've followed me this far, I believe you carry something you want to protect, a loved one, a memory, or a second chance. Tell me in the comments below what part of this story touched you most, and if you believe there are still hearts that need reminding they're not alone, follow this channel. Because human stories never go out of style, and everyone deserves a candle lit just for them.